Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food and with movement. And before we start, just a little disclaimer. I was always uploading 3 videos a week and I will probably tone that down to 2 videos a week just because I took in a lot of new coaching clients and I'm super excited about that. But I just want to make sure that I really prioritize them, that I have the time to prepare sessions, to be there for them throughout sessions. And I also have to take care of myself because I can only be a good coach if I'm well rested. So that being said, let's dive right into the topic as we always do. And today we're going to talk about missing your eating disorder. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there who are watching right now and who resonate with that topic because it's actually something super common in recovery. You can be so motivated, you can want to get rid of your eating disorder and still miss it at some point. And sometimes this feeling comes up at different times in your recovery. Sometimes it's in the beginning and then all of a sudden a year into recovery that feeling comes up again. And I want you to know that this doesn't mean that recovery is not working for you or that you will always have that feeling, but it's a very sneaky way of the eating disorder to try to get you back. And of course, there's way more to it. So today we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about some reminders that can help you to stay focused on recovery in that time and everything else that's connected to the topic. So missing your eating disorder actually makes sense because there is a reason why the eating disorder developed in the first place and also why it was sticking around for so long. The eating disorder served some kind of purpose, whether that is control, whether that is getting attention, whether that is dealing with your emotions or something completely different. For a lot of people, it's also connected to that trauma, or it's a mix of all of those. And oftentimes we don't even know for sure why the eating disorder stuck around for so long and what we used it for, but there must be a reason. Like with any addiction, there is a reason why it's sticking around for so long. An eating disorder can be seen as a process addiction. So we're getting addicted to the process, whether it's the dopamine hit that you get when you're not eating or when you reach a number of steps or even when your weight goes down, whether it's the feeling of control and getting kind of addicted to that control feeling or anything else connected to it. So it only makes sense that it takes a long time for your brain to rewire, that at some point these feelings come up again and you start to miss your eating disorder again. Some people even miss parts of their eating disorder that they wanted to get rid of so badly. Some people miss the body checking, the excitement of going to a grocery store, the feeling of being quote-unquote light. And of course, those feelings, I'm saying quote-unquote, because oftentimes it's deeply connected to something else, but it still feels real. And those feelings are valid. It's okay to miss your eating disorder and to still choose recovery. In fact, it's very common and it's important to just not act on those thoughts. I also hear a sentence a lot, which is, I wish I would have started earlier. And that is actually the case for so many people, but when we start recovery or when we think about starting recovery, we oftentimes think about pushing it out a little bit further. I want to see if I can go a little bit further. I want to see if I can reach that next goal, or once this and that is over, I can start recovery. And in theory, that might sound good, but it's not working. I myself did it for a very long time. As many of you guys know, I am from Germany, but I live in the US. And I always told myself once I move to the US, I will start recovery, which I actually did. But I deeply regret not starting earlier because for so many reasons. But one of the reasons is the longer you hold on to your eating disorder, the deeper all those neural pathways get, and the chances that it's just going to get more complicated to recover are there. That does not mean that you can't recover if you had an eating disorder for many years. I'm working with a lot of people who have had eating disorder for decades and they do get better, but I'm just saying you're not doing your future self a favor if you're holding on to your eating disorder any longer. Of course, there's also physical side effects that can appear, and so the longer you stick with an eating disorder, the higher the risk that you actually damage your body more and more. So overall, you might understand it rationally, like, hey, it doesn't really make sense. Why would I hold on to my eating disorder longer? Or when I'm in recovery, why would I want to go back? But then you wake up and you have those days where you really miss your eating disorder, where you kind of get those flashbacks of feelings like how it used to be, the control that you had, maybe the structure in your day, maybe even the way you felt about your body, even though you know that your body was not healthy. And in order to like work through that, it's first of all super important to understand it and to know, okay, this is what's going on. I'm not the only person who's experiencing that, but I still need to choose recovery. Because in hindsight, this is actually just a sign how sneaky your eating disorder is. Why would you miss something that destroyed your whole life and your body? But it feels so real, so it's just a sign how sneaky it is. Another thing that plays a big part in missing your eating disorder are fading affect bias. Fading affect bias are basically a mechanism of the brain to protect you. Because yes, nearly everything that our brain or body are doing is actually to protect us and for us to survive. I'm gonna give you a simple example and then we're gonna like project it on the eating disorder. A lot of people actually miss their high school times. They glamorize it. They say, oh my God, it was the best time of my life. And looking back, like I had so many good times. Life was so easy. But if you would be real, it was actually not that great. Some people dealt with bullying. Some people dealt with a high stress in school. Some people had issues getting up in the morning and being motivated for so many different subjects. But we still think, oh my God, it was such a good time. And the reason for that is because it takes more energy for our brain to think about and to process negative emotions than it does to process positive emotions. And another reason is also the same thing that happens for people who dissociate when they are like re-traumatized. It's kind of like a protection mechanism of the brain to not get into that trauma again or to not get into those negative feelings again, because again, it costs a lot of energy. So oftentimes we look back at something and we glamorize it and we actually only remember the good parts without seeing the bad parts. Some people who have been in toxic relationships know the same feeling. Some people who think about times of their lives where looking back they don't even understand why they felt a certain way because everything was so good know that feeling. Fading affect bias have a huge impact. They also appear in, for instance, addiction recovery. Some addicts like all of a sudden look back and say, oh, but it was so fun to drink so much and to just feel free and, you know, everything that's connected to their drinking habits, when actually they know, no, it was not fun and there's a reason why I chose recovery. So knowing that fading affect bias exists can be super helpful because it allows yourself to say like, hey, even if I would go back now, actually things wouldn't be great. My brain is kind of tricking me and the eating disorder is tricking me because I know that there's a reason why I chose recovery. Maybe I felt like I can't do this anymore. Maybe I was so concerned about my health. Maybe I just wanted to start living. I wanted to get rid of the eating disorder and all of a sudden I'm missing that. So something is not adding up here. I want you guys to know that, again, if you have those thoughts, those feelings, that is normal. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's nothing that shows you that you can't recover. You can recover, and in fact, this is a very crucial part of recovery, because those days where we miss the eating disorder but still choose recovery, those are the days where we actually strengthen those neural pathways, where we strengthen our healthy side, where we strengthen our recovery brain. So instead of seeing it as a barrier or as something negative or something that gets in the way of our recovery, we can actually see it as a little challenge that will help us to step closer to full recovery. So how can you choose recovery on those days? How can you stay in your positive mindset? For some people, this is a simple mantra. Some people have a mantra that always reminds them, hey, this is what I'm doing that for. I love working with mantras just because they can be super quick and something easily to remember. But in times of doubt, they can easily get you out of this negative overthinking mindset and focus back on recovery. Some ideas are things like, everything I'm doing for a life without an eating disorder. Or everything I'm doing for a more fulfilled life. Or this is part of recovery and I am stronger than this. Or I'm doing this for my future self. Whatever it is, whatever feels good for yourself, because I don't want you to fake it till you make it. I want you to find a mantra that actually resonates with you. That can be a good way to keep your mind focused on recovery. Another way is to write a list of reasons why you want to recover, what you want to get rid of in terms of your eating disorder, and what you want to gain from recovery. I oftentimes like to do that in the beginning of the coaching so that you have this list from the very beginning, and every time you're in doubt, you can get back to that list. And chances are, to be completely honest with you guys, that on days where you really miss your eating disorder, that list might not have such power as on the days where you're already positive and want to recover. But it can still help to to remind yourself of those things and to read over them. Another thing to do when you miss your eating disorder or when you're doubting recovery is to visualize the life that you want to have. To visualize the life where you can just go out and eat, or where you can wear whatever you want to wear without doubting yourself or without judging your body. To visualizing the life where choices are easy and where your life is not as controlled by the eating disorder. And I understand that this can be tricky for someone who might have never experienced that life. But oftentimes there's still like a simple, tiny part in our heads that is there and that has the hope and that has the power to visualize that part. And we want to start on growing that part. So in the end, whatever works best for you is okay. If you're working with a coach or a therapist, it can be super helpful to talk through those things with them and to just like identify what works for me and maybe also what doesn't. I personally am a picture person. So in my recovery, I knew I wanted to move to America and I knew I wanted to have this life without an eating disorder. So I watched a lot of shows that play in California. I looked at a lot of sunset pictures, a lot of beach pictures, and at the same time, I visualized myself living there without an eating disorder. I visualized myself going to get ice cream or going to go for a glass of wine and pizza spontaneously, because during my eating disorder, that was simply not possible. I also visualized myself in a confident way, because in my recovery, I felt so unconfident. And I oftentimes had the feeling like, oh, I felt actually more confident when I had an eating disorder. But this sense of confidence, so that you might connect with your eating disorder, isn't authentic, real confidence. It's false confidence because you're doing what the eating disorder wants you to do. So it's kind of like an eating disorder confidence that only exists if you're negotiating with the eating disorder or listening to the eating disorder. Real confidence means knowing that my worth is not attached to my body or to my appearance. Real confidence means knowing who I am as a person, allowing myself to like myself, allowing myself to find myself beautiful, but still being able to be confident on those days where I might look in the mirror and I look tired and I don't really love the way I look, but still feeling like, hey, I can still be confident. Those are two completely different worlds that you can only experience once you recover. And then once you're there, you don't want to go back. And as I always say, it's so worth it. I really hope this video helped you guys. Let me know in the comments if you can relate to the topic. Let me know if there's anything that helps you to keep focused on recovery. And as always, if there's any other topics that you would like me to cover. And I will see you in the next one.